will be two very important pieces of legislation that will be coming before the Congress this week. One is dealing with the continuing funding or appropriations process for all of the government programs. The second is financial services industry bill, which is Barney Frank's financial regulatory bill, which we'll be looking at in its entirety. But they both have something in common, and that's with ACORN. And so that's why we're here today. ACORN has demonstrated some bad behavior in this last year, and it seems like government's response can often be when there's bad behavior, they tend to reward it. We're very concerned that as this appropriations bill comes forward, that the American people were told that ACORN was going to be defunded. They were originally defunded through October 30th, and then from October 30th they were temporarily defunded again, but that will expire on December 18th. Now we're looking at new refunding bills in the appropriations process to fund ACORN potentially through September 30th of next year. We want to make sure that the American people get what they thought they were going to get, and that's a full defunding of ACORN through next September 30th. They expected it was a permanent defunding, which Congress could do, but they haven't done. We also haven't seen an investigation yet of ACORN and of their activities. Finally, what we're concerned about is putting ACORN, so to speak, as the fox in charge of the henhouse, because it looks like under Barney Frank's financial services bill that ACORN may have a seat at the table, being on the oversight committee regulating the financial services industry of the United States. And that would be a cruel joke, I think, to play on the American people.
This week they released an an independent review that said that ACORN was not liable for any of the wrongdoing that was captured on video. This was very interesting because one of the main things that they said is that these were ACORN housing employees. And I thought that was interesting because ACORN is one entity that has several different affiliate organizations that operate for the sole purpose of transferring money to ACORN. Unless people realize that, they're going to get away with lying to the American public. That's something they've been doing for a very long time now. An incident that I witnessed in the D.C. office where I saw this little container. They use it for testing lead in people's homes. And I asked the head organizer, and I was like, well, what is this? She said, I don't know. I don't know how to use that. But they have members that come into the office, and they get these lead paint kits, and they go out to their houses, and they're supposedly testing for lead paint to protect their kids, when in all actuality, they don't know what they're doing, but they're receiving government funds for it. They're manipulating poor people into thinking that they're being helped, but they're not being helped. If you hear people and they're paying lip service to reforming ACORN, you should turn a wary eye to those people because apparently they don't realize that this organization is corrupt by its very nature and it cannot be reformed. The only thing that needs to be done is an investigation of ACORN, and I'm urging Congress to defund them permanently so that as these ongoing investigations continue, people can realize the sort of criminal enterprise that they're really dealing with, and no more taxpayer money will be used to have children that will have disabilities for the rest of their life. It's actually very sad, and it's just disgusting that this is how our tax dollars are being spent.
When you consider the fact that ACORN is an organization that commingles both its exempt and non-exempt funding, is an organization that across the United States has committed voter fraud. For example, in Las Vegas, election law officials are right now moving forward with a case in which Christopher Edwards, the former Nevada field director for ACORN, has come forward and is helping election officials because election officials say 48% of the voter registrations in that area turned in by ACORN were clearly fraudulent, in the words of the election officials. So we've created sort of a hybrid organization here, and we've created it through taxpayer funding to a large extent.
The intimidation, the shakedown of lenders that ACORN did, to go in and shove a banker's desk off to the side and surround him and shout at him, chant at him, try to get him to provide bad loans in neighborhoods where they had the asset values declining. And while all that was going on, the sweetness and the nice arm of ACORN was here lobbying, as Ed Royce said, so that they could then lower the underwriting standards for Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac, and it created a housing bubble that has burst on us, and they were contributors to this economic decline that we are in. And that's not the biggest threat to America. The biggest threat to America is the undermining of our legitimate election process in the United States. And that is the 1.2 to 1.3 million voter registrations that ACORN has announced that they succeeded in securing in 2008 for the 2008 election cycle. They've also admitted to over 400,000 false or fraudulent voter registration forms that are part of that. Over 400,000. And then they claim that, well, never mind, they're only registrations, they really don't result in fraudulent votes. Well, who could imagine that millions would be spent by anyone to produce fraudulent registrations if they never resulted in fraudulent votes? ACORN is undermining our election process, and if we allow that to happen to where the credibility is eroded and destroyed in America, the Constitution itself loses its underpinnings, which is legitimate elections. So this is a very big deal. It threatens the Republic, and this Congress has an obligation to investigate, to hold hearings, and the executive branch has an obligation to do the same, and I believe they have an obligation to appoint a special prosecutor, get to the bottom of this for the American people.